right. Gonna have to bear with me a little bit with the sound quality again. I am still up in the Himalayas, so these are on my AirPods. We will be back to regular, scheduled, good quality sound for probably 2 weeks' time. Oh, where to begin? So I'm currently recording this from Dengboche, which is really deep in the Himalayas. We've been trekking now for 6 days, about 6, 7 hours each day. It's been super challenging, super incredible. And you can't see it, but I am looking at a beautiful mountain called Amu Dablam, and inside a little, I don't know, 6 by 8 plywood room with two single beds, no heat. We do get a fire around dinner time in the dining hall. And I gotta say, been super fortunate in my life. I worked really hard and was very lucky. That enabled me to stay at some 5-star, beautiful luxury hotels all over the world, LA, Tokyo, Greece, Spain. But this little hotel summit, it's called, in Dengboche, it's probably my favorite hotel I've stayed at. Everyone here, it's run by a family. They're so happy. Food is incredible. And you're so exhausted by the end of the trekking each day that you get the best sleep of your life, even though you're on about 2 inches of foam on some wood. But I got some notes here because I've had so many different thoughts. Obviously, you have a lot of time to think when you're hiking for 6 to 8 hours a day. And I think I'll start maybe by sharing this poem that's hanging in the dining hall, just 10 meters away from me, because I think it encapsulates a lot of what I've been thinking about and feeling as I've been in the mountains. Mountains are medicine. It's so crazy. It's very hard. I'm exhausted, but it kind of feels like the mountains are cheering you on or smiling down on you. But the poem is called The Paradox of Our Age. We have bigger houses, but smaller families. More conveniences, but less time. We have more degrees, but less sense. More knowledge, but less judgment. More experts, but more problems. More medicine, but less healthiness. We've been all the way to the moon and back, but have trouble crossing the street to meet the new neighbor. We built more computers to hold more information, to produce more copies than ever, but have less communication. We have become long on quantity, but short on quality. These are times of fast food, but slow digestion. Tall man, but short character. Steep profits, but shallow relationships. It is a time when there is much in the window, but nothing in the room. Gets ya. Feels pretty accurate. And yeah, I think it's what I've been thinking about. It's just like how backwards we have things in the West, um, particularly around what it means to be a successful person in society. I think when you think of a successful person in the West, you think of someone who is really good at generating wealth. And then they use that wealth to make themselves and their immediate family as comfortable as humanly possible. And they try to accumulate as many things as they can to signal their success. And we live in a capitalist society, not anti-capitalism at all. The capitalist game is all about generating capital. So it makes sense that the winners are those who can generate wealth. But I think where we messed it up is what we do with that wealth. And while I've been on the road, I've met many successful people over in this part of the world. Few examples. There was a hostel owner I was talking to in Sigiriya, Sri Lanka, called Roy's Hostel. Beautiful place. If you're ever in Sigiriya, you should stay there. I think I'd say hostel is a bit of a stretch. It was pretty bougie. I think it's a hostel for those travelers who maybe just want to connect with people but maybe have a little more resources at, you know, your own room, your own bathroom, beautiful grounds, delicious food, big pool. And they charged more or less Western prices, I would say. So even by our standards, um, you can do the math. And this place they never had uh, an empty room. So making some good money. And, you know, Roy was there every day working, extremely unassuming, no fancy watch on his wrist. I think he came to work on a scooter. And, what he did with his wealth was he was from a different village, and he had employed, God, like probably 15 of his friends from that village. It was like just ridiculously overstaffed. You could probably get away with one third. And that's how we would do it, in the West. Be like, how many people do we need? Let's cut head count. Like everyone else, let's fire them. But what he did was gave all of these people the ability to create, you know, capital, generate wealth, gave them opportunity so that they can support their own families. And then, you know, beyond upgrading the facilities and things, he took the rest of the money and he put that back into his village where he came from because he knew how hard it was growing up and they still lack infrastructure and the government's not coming to help them. So he used his success to create opportunity and to give back at really his own, what we would deem as his own cost, Probably doesn't have a big house. He doesn't have a fancy car. He doesn't have all of that stuff. And because that's not important. And I think we kind of all know that, but we do it anyway. And then there was another gentleman who runs the tour that I'm on. So he's an Everest tour operator. And it's not exactly cheap to do this trek, ever since becoming more and more popular. They charge in USD, and there's groups going up, you know, constantly. They have two busy seasons, and it's nonstop. And again, you can do the math, and you're like, wow, this is a very healthy business. And same story. He's wearing normal clothes, nothing fancy about him. Um, and he shared too. He's got a village where he grew up that still doesn't have great schooling and great access to water. And so he pushes all of his profits after he pays his employees, which are all friends and family again, all people from his village. He pushes it back to helping, um, which is just incredible. And, the last one was a restaurant owner in Sigiriya, Sri Lanka again. No, sorry, Trincomalee, Sri Lanka. Super, super popular restaurant. It's called Mama's Kitchen. Super cool. He has a bunch of moms in the back, like cooking traditional recipes. Again, you got to stop there if you ever go. Um, but it was just packed all the time. I think they were just lunch and dinner, but anytime you walk by, just packed. And we got talking to him, and he was like, "Yeah, we're kind of like struggling a little bit." I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you guys seem to be killing it. You're the like busiest restaurant in the village. And he was like, "Yeah, I actually opened a rescue center for all the stray dogs. There's a big, stray dog problem, and they don't get a lot of love." And so he takes care of, 50 plus dogs, um, with the profits from that restaurant. Again, pays his employees, pushes all of it back into making these dogs have an enjoyable existence rather than, begging for food and fighting on the street. And, it's pretty inspiring. And of course, if you're listening to this, you might go, people are charitable in the West as well. And I know that. I know that we have a lot of examples of successful people that they give back in big ways. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, we really only do that when our own cup, our own wealth cup is overflowing. And then maybe we will share the spillage and relish the tax breaks that come with our charitable donations. And and I'm certainly not absolved of this. I'm not sitting on a uh, my high horse saying I've I've been incredibly guilty of it. I look back at the wealth I was able to create and, how obsessed I was with trying to make that wealth turn into more wealth. It's just sitting in, a stock portfolio or crypto or whatever, because it never feels like enough. So it's like, yeah, I'll help people when I have enough. But it's never enough. And yeah, I think at least for me, that's going to change. Can you I don't think we're good at sacrificing any of our personal comforts to help others. Once we have all our personal comforts and more, we'll help others. But I kind of shifted in my head a little bit of more is relative, extremely relative. And what you think is not enough might be a year's salary, a new school, like just it can be put to really, really good work. And I think that line of thinking kind of bleeds well into another thing that's hanging on the wall in the dining hall. Quick pause to thank our partners. This episode is brought to you by Optimizing.ai and DreamFuel. Optimizing AI uses artificial intelligence to reveal exactly how your audience and users feel
about your product demos, campaigns, tutorials, onboarding videos, or really any digital experience. They're going to track vital signs and stress levels, and you can join their waitlist now in the show notes. And by Dreamfuel. Dreamfuel is a mental performance coaching platform for leaders and teams. Dreamfuel's elite coaches are going to help you achieve your goals, but do it in a way where you're also lowering stress levels, feeling more aligned, and tapping into kind of your highest purpose and highest calling. Each month, they are nice enough to give away a handful of free one-to-one coaching sessions for listeners of the Wake Up Call. So go to the show notes and claim yours now. Even that one session can make a really big difference. All right, back to the show.
Again, from the Dalai Lama. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the last quote, but it goes, it's called The True Meaning of Life. We are visitors on this planet. We are here for 90 or 100 years at the very most. During that period, we must try to do something good, something useful with our lives. If you can contribute to other people's happiness, you will find the true goal, the true meaning of life. Kind of feels like it. There's a couple things in the works for when I finish up this little walkabout that I'm going to dedicate my life to. I'll share those later. But just try to be of service. And what a better way to spend your life than trying to alleviate suffering and bringing people joy. There are a lot of different ways to do that. Yeah, feel pretty good. I'm really happy I did this trek. No phones, so much time to think, so much exercise, which is really, really important for me and my own mental health. And the people you meet along the way are beautiful. Nepalese people in general are just so giving and so kind. It's another thing I've noticed on the road. The countries where Buddhism is the major religion seem to be, on the whole, a little bit happier than I've visited a lot of places in the world. And at least anecdotally, that's true. And I think, I'm not a Buddhist. And whatever religion or creed you stand for, I think, regardless of that, there's a lot to learn in the teachings and the way of life. Rereading Siddhartha, which is a really beautiful book. If you haven't read it, it's a good jumping off point. But yeah, so the next, well, I don't know when I'll have access to Wi-Fi again. I'm going to try and do another one of these on the road, just because mind has been flooded with thoughts, but not like busy thoughts. I don't know. Just like quiet sort of contemplation. So there's a whole journal of stuff to share, but I think my very limited Wi-Fi is going to cut off, I think, for the whole town in about 20 minutes. So I got to somehow send this to my editor to get it up. But we are now 3 days away from Everest Base Camp, which is super cool. Something I wanted to do for a long time. I actually thought I was going to climb Everest at one point, but that was, I was younger and maybe more full of naivete and just a ridiculous drive. don't think I need to do that anymore. But Everest Base Camp's going to be super cool. Um, and then, funnily enough, the hard part starts after that. Um, we decided to extend and go a bit deeper to somewhere called Cholo Pass, which takes us to Gyoko Lake. And again, I probably butcher all of the places I mentioned, but that's more or less accurate. And that's when you're at very high elevation, about 5,500 meters. So it's really tough to breathe. And snow the whole way. So you got your crampons on. So it slows you down. We still go, roughly the same distance every day, but it'll be a lot harder. But feeling ready, feeling excited. We got an incredible tour guide who's keeping us all alive, named Sukra. Shout out Sukra. You're the man. Another thing that just, comes to me is you really understand that breath is life up here. I don't know if listeners practice yoga or do breath work or anything, and Buddhism as well kind of talks so much about breath and the life-giving force of just breathing. And when you start losing oxygen, you certainly have a new appreciation for your beautiful lungs. And each breath really does, feel like a gift. So I'm going to try and keep that with me even when I'm back in lands that have more oxygen. Um, and then the last thing I was thinking about today, it was supposed to be a rest day today, but we did a acclimatization hike, which was like 600 meters straight uphill in the morning, which is like harder than some of the other, non-rest days. But um, this idea that just like in life, you'll make a ton of mistakes. And when you're climbing and trekking, you make a lot of mistakes. You slip here, you slip there. You're not focused enough, and maybe your pole doesn't hit where you wanted it to go. Maybe you don't bring enough, water for the day. Um, but what you learn is there's certain mistakes you cannot undo. And, there's certain ridge lines that you walk on that you better be 100% focused because there's no undoing that mistake. Something as simple as getting your gear wet at certain altitudes can be a death sentence. And so you learn very quickly, let's say the 4 or 5 mistakes that you can't undo. And I think in life, it's the same. It's okay to make mistakes, of course. I don't think we think about the few mistakes that we can make in life. There's maybe only, a handful, other than breaking major laws, that cannot be undone. You can really hurt people. Um, you can do serious damage to your body, whether through addiction or misusing, not appreciating the body we have. Yeah, just something I was reflecting on, and maybe something to think about in your own life, because it can happen. And sometimes they don't feel like those big mistakes. Yeah, God's okay. And then can't be undone. But I think that's it for me. Is there anything else? No, that's it. I appreciate you listening to these. I hope these solo episodes of me just talking to you are an enjoyable listen. It helps me articulate my thoughts for sure. And I'm going to go eat some delicious stew and get in front of that fire ASAP. Appreciate you. Hopefully, I can do another one of these. And hopefully, I can get this to my editor before the Wi Fi's gone. All right.